you followed the Sharon Moore contract situation is finally signed and sealed, which my interpretation is we just got our butts kicked and we looked awful. And a lot of that could be targeted at the head coach's lack of preparation of this team and horrible. Well, there was no game management because they were trailing the entire time, but there was just, I'll start with Alex Orji. If he's not going to run the ball on 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5, then, then death taxes. And, it's one of those deals that's all they do. Could they not have taught this guy and repped him through maybe 3 pass plays that he could get down? Just, this is all we're doing. We're going to rep you every day on these 3 pass plays, and therefore we can keep the defense honest. No, we're going to run right at the Texas defense on 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5. It happened 3 times. This was the most predictable thing in the world. So it was a badly prepared game plan, not just for that reason, but Michigan just did not look prepared for Texas. Obviously, Steve, I'll give it up to you because you've been talking the entire offseason. The Michigan team is not the same. I was holding on to culture, toughness, etc., defense. And the defense, which I expected, okay, if there's a 31 on the scoreboard for Texas at the end of the game, it's going to be because the defense wore down. Nope, the defense got dragged around the field from the first drive.
Yep.
So maybe missing Rod Moore is a bigger deal than we thought. Maybe even though their new linebackers, Ernest Hausman, who obviously was with the team but not a starter last year, and Jayshon Barham from Maryland are extremely athletic and better athletes than Junior Colson and Michael Barrett. But maybe those guys getting people in the right place was missed on this day against Texas.
Yeah, what was it, 24-3 or 24-6 at halftime? It was not a good situation, obviously, for Michigan to fall behind that far of a margin. I think you have to also give Texas a ton of credit. This is Quinn Ewers, who is regarded as one of, if not the top quarterback in the country. And he showed everybody what he's made of, I think, in this game. I think he had complete command, it felt, at times of the entire football game. And it was just kind of like he was dictating the terms, to Michigan of their surrender, so to speak. I mean, it's 31-6 in the second half. So, this was his, we talk about Joe Burrow early in that Heisman season. I think he went to Texas, I believe, and put a number on Texas. And I think that is kind of what Quinn Ewers just did for Texas at Michigan. I've been saying it's a 4-loss team at Michigan. And people on Twitter have, posted, if you thought, it was going to be the same team when you lose this laundry list of starters plus this laundry list of coaches from the team last year, then you obviously don't follow college football very closely. And that was my take on them all along. So this just feels to me like a market correction, I guess, on them, that water reaches its level, however you want to put it, that all is right with the world again, that they're back where they should be. And again, they needed to desperately go out and find a quarterback, and they didn't do that. So in the transfer portal. So that was pretty much illustrated, and not to mention a few more starters to plug holes on defense as well. So to me, they've got USC coming in a few weeks. USC seems like they are playing lights out football. They did not take a step back after beating LSU. We saw Notre Dame beat Texas A&M away from home and then come home. Everybody told them how great they were for a week. And then they lost to a MAC team for the first time in school history to Northern Illinois. They'd been 10-0 all time against MAC opponents prior to that, and lose to Northern Illinois. What was the reverse at USC? They went on the road to Vegas, beat LSU, had everybody telling them how great they were for a week, and then just went out and absolutely dismantled. I think it was Utah State there on Saturday. So, and Utah State typically has been middle of the road Mountain West. I don't know exactly if they're going to be that good this year or not. They play Utah this coming week, but USC is coming to Michigan in a couple of weeks as well, and it's probably going to look a lot the same if they don't get their stuff together quick up there in Ann Arbor.
Well, and the trip to Illinois doesn't look as easy anymore, does it? This is a season where once we saw USC the way they were playing against LSU, and once we saw the way Michigan was playing against Fresno State, it looked like things were trending towards 2-2 right at that moment. But in terms of, I've got plenty of stuff to say. Mika is saying Will Johnson is overrated. They didn't target Will Johnson at all in this game, and they were fine. So you can avoid Will Johnson, and he's going to take away a receiver. That's fine. We've got others, and good luck defending them. Jayshawn Barham was not good in coverage. Safeties, Makari Page was giving up catches. He's your captain. He's your best safety right now because Rod Moore is out. Texas wore them down over the course of drives. Wink Martindale putting Mason Graham at defensive end instead of defensive tackle is boggling to me. And then they get down in Texas gets down into the red zone and Mason Graham's on the sideline. What? I know I love the fact that they substitute as much as they do, but you do that smartly, not dumbly. And they did it dumbly in this one by putting Mason Graham on the bench in the red zone. And so there were some mistakes made, but the disparity in skill, Mason Graham is great. Kenneth Grant really hasn't done anything yet this season that has been remarkable. So I think that needs to step up because we've talked about those two being the best tandem in the country. They're not showing it right now. And some of that is because Mason Graham isn't at defensive tackle as much as he should be. But so there's some issues, and they attacked Jair Hill, the other corner. He held up some, not entirely. The offensive line for Michigan is trouble. The Yakov saying Tony Alford plus Donovan Edwards equals a bad run game. The Donovan Edwards that we've seen this season is the Donovan Edwards who exists among us in this world. The outliers are the big games, and I think he's had maybe like 5 remarkable games in his career in terms of having a high output in yards per carry because he hits home runs in those games. And I think I said it here last week, 20%, 1/5 of his career yards, his career rushing yards have come on 5 carries. And before this past game, he had 305 carries in his career. Almost 20% of his yards came on 1.6% of his carries. So it's the other 98.4% of his carries that exhibit who Donovan Edwards is. And this is who Donovan Edwards is. We saw he almost broke one, but he got tackled by the one guy that could tackle him and barely got a hand on him. And so to expect it to be something other than that, I don't think you should. There are going to be some times where he does break out because we've seen it. There's proof of that. But it's usually after he runs into a pile of people and somehow doesn't get tackled and then comes out and then is free. And there's nobody around because everybody just went to tackle the pile. And so those 5 carries, if somebody would have done their job each of those times, then his yards would be much, much lower. Now, to your last point, Mark, or your first point about Alex Orji, why don't you have passes that you can throw? I think they did, and against Fresno State, they had him throw one pass about 6 yards downfield, and he skipped it. And so then they're like, well, that's it. I don't know how they went into this whole thing with the quarterback situation that they have. And I know people say, well, it's not the quarterback. It's not the quarterback. It's also the quarterback, I would say, with Davis Warren, because they can't stretch the field with him. I've got, I did numbers and I know I'm looking for them now. Like I think it was 2 of 7 on passes more than 5 yards downfield against in the first 3 quarters, because that's really all we're talking about in the first 3 quarters against Texas, because in the fourth quarter, they're backed way off and prevent, and they'll just give up catches after catch. But yeah, it was 2 of 7 on passes of more than 5 yards downfield, 2 interceptions. Those 2 completions, one was a flea flicker, so it's a trick play. Another was a scramble play that he hit. Colston Loveland had to throw back across his body into traffic, and Colston Loveland came down with it. Other than that, there is nothing there. He was 7 of 9 on passes, 5 yards and under, with I think 4 of those going 1 yard or behind the line of scrimmage. So They can't stretch the field. They have no receivers that can stretch the field right now. And I'll just keep throwing numbers out to you. And so 31 times the receivers have been targeted this year. Michigan's receivers have been targeted for a total of 147 yards. They're averaging 4.7 yards per target. Jeremiah Smith, not fair to compare him to anybody, is averaging 3 times that per target. Ohio State, the Michigan receivers, and I'm just trying to look at all of my numbers here. So that 31 for 147. Ohio State's receivers have been targeted 50 times this year for 555 yards, 11.1 yards per target. Again, these are two very different receiving cores, but also Michigan just won a national championship last year. Like, you should not have this level of playmaker, this low, like there's nothing there. There's no fear from a defense of the playmakers. The only fear here is make sure Donovan Edwards doesn't get outside. And also let's try to stop Kalal Mullings at the line of scrimmage so that he doesn't get 5 yards on us. And then if Colston Loveland beats us, it is what it is. But even him, he's averaging under 10 yards a catch. Like, you'll take that.
Your offense is in trouble when your best player is a tight end. That is typically not a good thing, unless he's Brock Bowers and you've got 10 other guys that are much below him, and they're all NFL players.
There's no Stetson Bennett here.
And the Donovan Edwards, I could not have framed it any better than that, but I cannot believe this stat, Tony. Let's post this. So we've got Donovan Edwards with 313 carries in his career.
Mm-hmm.
And go over that stat again.
Well, and so this was before this past game, so I don't have the exact numbers now, but basically 19% of his career yards at this point now have come on 5 carries. And those are carries, the 2 of them, 10% of his career yards as of last week have come on the 2 carries against Ohio State in 2022, the 75-yarder and the 85-yarder. Like that, those are extreme outliers that have created this kind of house of cards for what people think Donovan Edwards has been and is. And people talk about he's, Gus Johnson calling him the Don. I mean, he's a Don. If we want to get to the Ohio State or an Ohio State, he is a Don at this point.
Well, Gus Johnson is the John Sterling of college football announcers. He's just an entertainer, just wants to make up nicknames and not necessarily understand what's being played in front of him. But that's another matter. That's astounding. Yeah, Michigan, we thought Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson were just decent receivers, but shoot, they would love to have those 2 guys right now. And Kalal Mullings, this hit me in watching him against Texas and then watching the rest of the day in college football. He's a nice back. But man, there are some beasts out there running the football. Jaquindon Jackson is not even a star player, but at Arkansas, watching him and Ollie Gordon obviously didn't have a great day, but we know what he can do. And I'm just watching these backs across the nation and thinking Kalal Mullings he's a nice back, but he's not an upper echelon back himself. But he has to be RB1 because Donovan Edwards is exactly what you just made him out to be. If you've got either him, running into a pile and able to bounce it and just find this Mack truck sized lane that he's an athlete. He can run fast. And I've never seen a run where he either showed great vision or great slash elusiveness or ability to break tackles.
And they're not using him in the passing game at all right now. Can you throw that graphic back up of the Donovan Edwards? Because
which they should.
Yeah,
that's
definitely should.
That he has.
So those 5 carries, 67-yarder, 75, 85, 41, and 60. So his career average, 5.5 yards per carry now. He's now played 26 games, I believe. And I'm just looking at that in terms of maybe the last 3 years, whatever that number is. But he's only hit his average of 5.5 yards per carry 8 times in his career in the last 3 years. Like, that also tells you that that's not actually your average yards per carry. That's a bloated statistic based on some long runs. And then Kalal Mullings, he's he's a more consistent guy. So then he becomes, we just need that 4 yards. We just need that 5 yards. Whereas for anybody else, any other program, any other major program, especially one that relies on the running game, you want more than just 4 or 5 yards. Like, you want somebody that can go the distance. And Donovan Edwards has shown he can do that. But I think people think he does it a lot more than he actually does it. And now I will step off my soapbox.
The Iowa running back, Caleb Johnson, is somewhat of a version of that, but I think there's more meat to the bone, and I think there's more substance there to him being able to grind out some, but he's kind of similar in that way too. He's a specimen that rips off huge runs and did against Iowa State. They should have ran away with that game on Saturday. Interesting stuff. And then the Sharon Moore contract, I'd mentioned that at the start of the Michigan segment here. The timing to me reeks of we're proving our confidence in our head coach despite what you saw on Saturday.
Yeah. Wow. They're stuck. I don't know what else to say. They're stuck. I don't know.
Is the contract signing the dreaded vote of confidence? Is that where we are right now?
It's what it seems like. I don't know.
I mean, the memorandum of understanding that he was operating under is not unusual until a contract gets signed. But it is interesting that he was one of 2 head coaches that had not signed their contracts yet, and that it suddenly gets signed within 2 weeks of the story coming out. And it does make you wonder. But I wonder that contract will be FOIA'd pretty quickly if it hasn't already, if they haven't released the details, and you'll see what kind of caveats are in there that the ones that Jim Harbaugh didn't want in there, maybe, who knows?
Quite intriguing. Yes. I appeared on the Michigan podcast this week, and Steve Dace's kind of theme for the entire deal was, oh, well, we won the Natty, meaning to say, hey, it's all icing on the cake. It's all gravy now, 7-5, whatever it is. We won the Natty. I'm going to cherish that. And yes, I see it all falling apart in front of me, but what can you do? I've got my memories.
Oh, but you'll have the memories.
Maybe not the hardware, possibly, but you'll have the memories.
Well, I mean, and the thing with the memories, I mean, Michigan fans still get upset when people talk about their half national championship from 97, like not giving them full credit. People are going to give them credit for this national championship last year, so it's going to continue to drive them crazy. Whether or not it ever gets removed.
What I find amazing is that nobody cared about that program for about 15 years, and then they all came out of the woodwork, the last couple of years when they started winning again. Here in Ohio, you never saw any Michigan shirts for the last 10, 15 years. And now there's somebody on every corner wearing one, and I think we're about to go back into that hibernation period, I think, here for the next several years.
You're giving me flashbacks to high school when it used to just drive me crazy that I'd see as many Michigan shirts as Ohio State shirts in my high school.
And they'd seem like normal, well-adjusted people, and then they would flash that stuff, a bumper sticker or a sweatshirt or something, and you're just like, really? Really? I mean, I don't know. Whatever.
I grew up in Northwest Ohio, so if you – it was always like the kids that I knew and the people that I knew that were Michigan fans did it just to be different and rile people up, but they stopped. I think – like you guys said, the shirts and the coats went away. I think a lot of them have come back, of course.
Not
recently,
04.
but
04, 05, it all just kind of went whap, and that was that. So about the time of that Gonzalez catch, the 4-yard line, that was the one that
Yeah, beautiful 5 minutes of football to end that that game.